আসসালামু আলাইকুম। ৪০ দিনের রিডিং চ্যালেঞ্জের ১৬তম দিনে আপনাদের স্বাগতম। আমি আছি তুষার আপনাদের সাথে। আর যারা আমার ভিডিওটি নতুন তাদের উদ্দেশ্যে আমি বলতে চাই যে আমি ৪০ দিনের আর্টিকেল পড়ার রিডিং পড়ার চ্যালেঞ্জ নিয়েছি যাতে আমার রিডিং স্কিল বাড়ে, আমার স্ক্যানিং, স্কিমিং পাওয়ার বাড়ে এবং এই পাওয়ার নিয়ে যাতে আমি আইএলটিএস ভালো করতে পারি। আমি রিডিংয়ে খুব একটা ভালো না, স্ট্রাগল করে যাচ্ছি এখন পর্যন্ত এবং যারা আমার মতো রিডিংয়ে দুর্বল বুঝতে পারতেছেন না যে কিভাবে রিডিং টা আমি বাড়াবো বা আসলেই সঠিক পদ্ধতিটা কি, তাদের জন্যই এই ভিডিওটা আমি শেয়ার করছি। আমি উপকার পাচ্ছি, তো আমি ভাবলাম যে হোয়াই নট আমি আপনাদের সাথে শেয়ার করি। তো আমি টপিক বেস প্রতিদিন পড়ার চেষ্টা করছি যে প্রথমে ক্লাইমেট পড়েছি, তারপরে ট্রাভেল বেস অনেকগুলো আর্টিকেল পড়ার চেষ্টা করেছি, হিস্টোরি পড়েছি, কালচার পড়েছি এবং এখন আমি ওয়ার্ক লাইফ নিয়ে পড়বো কিছুদিন। এগুলো এই জন্যই পড়ছি যে এই প্যাসেজগুলো রিলেটেড যদি কোনো প্যাসেজ আইএলসে এসে থাকে, যেমন কালচার রিলেটেড যে কোনো প্যাসেজ যদি এসে থাকে, তাহলে হয়তো কিছুটা ওয়ার্ড আমাদের হেল্পফুল হবে, কিছুটা আগে থেকে জানা থাকবে। আমরা ওইটাকে পরিচিত থাকবো প্যাসেজগুলোর সাথে। তো এই জন্যই আমার এই পড়া এবং স্ক্যানিং স্কিমিং পাওয়ার না থাকলে আপনারা জানেন যে কোনো কিছু খুঁজে বের করতে অনেক সমস্যা হয় এবং এটা পার্টিকুলারলি আমার লাইফ টাইম আমাকে হেল্প করবে রিডিং পড়ার অভ্যাস যদি আমি করতে পারি। এবং এখান থেকে আমি বিভিন্ন ওয়ার্ড নেওয়ার চেষ্টা করি, সেই ওয়ার্ডগুলো আমাকে আদার যে মডিউল রয়েছে রাইটিংয়ে হেল্প করে, স্পিকিংয়ে হেল্প করে। তো আমার মতো যদি কেউ থেকে থাকেন আমার সাথে এই চ্যালেঞ্জটি নিতে পারেন যে কেউ। আমি প্রতিদিন যে আর্টিকেলগুলো পড়ি তার লিঙ্ক ডেসক্রিপশন বক্সে দিয়ে দিই। তো এই হচ্ছে আমার স্ট্র্যাটেজি। ওকে, যেহেতু ওয়ার্ক লাইফ নিয়ে আমরা কিছুদিন পড়ার চেষ্টা করব, তো এখানে আমি একটি আর্টিকেল নিয়েছি, দ্য কনভারসেশনাল হ্যাবিটস দ্যাট বিল্ড বেটার কানেকশন। এখান থেকে আমরা ওয়ার্ড স্ট্রাকচার এগুলো নিব এবং তার আগে আমি স্টপ ওয়াচ চালু করে দিব যে আমার কতক্ষণ সময় লাগলো বুঝে পড়তে, কতক্ষণ সময় লাগলো এবং পরবর্তীতে আমি আরেকবার জাস্ট ফার্স্ট পড়ে যাব রিডিং, তখন দেখবো আমার কতক্ষণ সময় লাগে। তো এই হচ্ছে আমার আমি চেষ্টা করবো এই দুইভাবে পড়ার। ঠিক আছে, তাহলে শুরু করা যাক। The conversational habits that build better connection, and this article was published by Robson, David Robson, 12th November 2021. Okay, the conversational habits that build better connection. The writer tried to say that conversational habit is a strong habit and it's maybe built better connection with others. Can you chat your way to greater social connection, connections? Can you chat your way? আপনি কি আমার মতো আপনি কি আপনার মতো কাজ করতে পারেন, চ্যাটিং করতে পারেন টু greater social connection, যেটা greater social connection বাড়াবে? Five useful steps. Five beneficial steps facility can help us strengthen ties. Ties means bondhon. Strengthens means shoktishali. Okay, the five step we can follow. Five step to strengthen our ties and avoid mistakes. And we can avoid so many mistakes here. The writer tried to saying the perfect way how can strengthen ourselves and the better ties between us without mistakes. Okay, let's try to do some reading today. There is no such things as conversation. There is no such thing as conversation. What is the meaning?
কথোপকথন বলে কিছু নেই।
There is no such as thing as conversation. The novelist and literary critic Rebecca West famously wrote in her collection of stories, The Harsh Voice, it is an illusion. What means the illusion? Bribramaya. Okay, it is an illusion. There are intersecting monologues monologue
Monologues.
monologues
Monologues.
monologues means বিশেষ্য.
monologues,
Monologues. Monologues. Okay. There are intersecting monologue, that is all. In her opinion, our own words, in her opinion, mhm, our own words simply pass over the words of other without any profound communication taking place. Our own words, our own words simply pass over the words of others without any profound means govir, profound knowledge, profound, okay, profound thinking, I mean deep thinking. Profound is a really interesting word for use in speaking. Profound communication, profound, without any profound communication taking place, without any profound communication taking place,
কোনো গভীর যোগাযোগ সঞ্চালিত ছাড়া,
কোনো গভীর যোগাযোগ সংস্কৃত ছাড়া, উইদাউট অ্যানি প্রোফাউন্ড কমিউনিকেশন টেকিং প্লেস, মানে কোনো গভীর কমিউনিকেশন ছাড়াই আমরা কি করতে পারি, তার মতে কি, আওয়ার ওন ওয়ার্ডস সিম্পলি পাস ওভার দ্য ওয়ার্ডস অফ আদার্স। পাস ওভার আওয়ার ওন ওয়ার্ডস, আমাদের নিজের কিছু ওয়ার্ড কি করে, শুধু পাস ওভার করে, কাদের কাছে, অন্যের কাছে।
আমাদের নিজের কথা অন্যের কথার উপর দিয়ে যায়।
Who has not been able to empathize, who had not been able to empathize with the sentiment. Empathize, what is this?
empathize,
Empathize.
empathize,
সহানুভূতি করা, empathize. Who has not been able to empathize with this sentiment at some point in your life, whether you are making small talk with a barista, bartendeরের কাছে, whatever, or whether we are making a small talk with the barista or meeting up with a close friends, we may hope to make a connection, only to leave the conversation feeling that our minds have failed to meet, only to leave the conversation feeling that our minds have that our minds have failed to meet, মানে কি,
শুধুমাত্র কথোপকথন ত্যাগ করার অনুভূতি যে আমাদের মন মিলতে ব্যর্থ হয়েছে।
we may hope to make a connection, আমরা we may hope to make a connection, আমরা আশা করি একটা কানেকশন করা, only to leave the conversation, conversation করতে, feeling that our minds have failed to meet. The pandemic has surely heightened our awareness to has sensations. Sensation means সংবেদন.
sensations,
সংবেদন. The pandemic has surely heightened our awareness of this sensation. Yes, sure. After a long period of isolation, that is a good word. Isolation, 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 আলাদা করা,
isolation,
isolation. After a long period of isolation, our hunger for social contact is greater than ever. Our higher for social contact, yes, definitely. Our desire of social contact is greater than before, and it's even more disappointing to feel that avoid romance between us and others, even when rules of physical distancing have been lifted. Means lifted, even when rules of physical distancing have been lifted. If this rings true for you, if this rings true for humans, help may be at hand.
সাহায্য হাতের কাছে থাকতে পারে।
During the past during the past few years, psychologists studying the art of conversation have identified many of the barriers that stand in the way of a deeper connection and the way to remove them. Read on the top 5 steps to better conversation. अच्छा Psychologists studying the art of conversation have identified many of the barriers that stands in the way of deeper connection. Hmm. The scientists have identified some barriers who are really really found at the deeper conversation, and it breaks the deeper conversation to deep conversation, and the way to remove them, and also they are discussed in this article how we avoid them, how we remove them, the barriers spelling barriers, 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 barriers. Barriers means badha. Barriers means badha. Okay, the barriers that stand in the way of a deeper connection and the way to remove them. Read on for the top 5 steps to better conversation. Ask questions. The first step might seem obvious.
প্রথম ধাপ সুস্পষ্ট মনে হতে পারে।
Okay, the first step might seem obvious. Obvious means স্পষ্ট. Sposto, obvious, obvious, obvious. Yet, it is often forgotten.
তবুও এটি প্রায়শই ভুলে যায়।
Okay, the first step might seem obvious, yet it is often forgotten. If you want to have a meaningful dialogue with someone, rather than two intersecting monologues, then you should make the effort to ask some question. Okay, consider the research of Karen Hong, an assistant professor at Georgetown University, US. While studying for a PhD in organizational behavior at Harvard University, Hong invited more than 130 participants into her laboratory and asked them to converse in pairs for 15 minutes through and one line instant messenger, 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 asked them to converse in pairs মানে দুইজন করে। তাদের বললো যে কি বললো, দুইজন জোরে জোরে করে 15 মিনিট অনলাইনে মেসেঞ্জারে কি করো, কথা বলো বা কমিউনিকেট করো, চ্যাটিং করো। She found that even in this short period of time, people rates of question asking varied widely. That means question asking varied widely. There are many types of question they ask between them, from around 4 or fewer at the low end to 9 or more at the high end. What is this?
নিম্ন প্রান্তে 4 বা তার কম থেকে উচ্চ প্রান্তে 9 বা তার বেশি।
ওকে, কোশ্চেন গুলো 4 বা 9 এর উপরে আস্ক করতেছিল। ফিয়ার দ্য লো ইন দ্য 9 or more at the high end. Never underestimate the power of asking question, and an individual going in far a flow up. Research show never underestimate. Underestimate means অবমূল্যায়ন, never underestimate means অবমূল্যায়ন,
underestimate,
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 underestimate, অবমূল্যায়ন,
underestimate,
never underestimate the power of asking question.
প্রশ্ন জিজ্ঞাসা করার ক্ষমতাকে কখনোই অবমূল্যায়ন করবেন না।
And indeed going for in for a flow up.
এবং প্রকৃতপক্ষে একটি ফলোআপের জন্য যাচ্ছে।
Throughout a series of flow of studies, series,
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 series, series,
series,
series. Throughout a series of flow up studies, Hung found question asking made a significant differences to people like ability. Analyzing the conversation at street dating events, for example, she found that the number of questions asked by a participant could predict their chance of securing another meeting. Number of questions asked by a participant could predict their chance of securing another meeting. Okay, they want to make another meeting, so they try to secure them. They must meet in future. Not all questions are equally charming. Charming means communio. Okay, not all questions. all আসছে যার কারণে এখানে কি হলো এস যুক্ত হলো। আমরা এটাও ফলো করতে পারি, গ্রামারগুলোও ফলো করব একই সাথে। Not all questions are equally 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 charming. A flow-up that requires more information about the previous point is more appealing, more appealing, আবেদনময়,
appealing,
more
appealing,
more appealing than a switch that changes topic, or a mirror that simply copies what someone has already asked you. Importantly, Hang's findings suggested that most people did not anticipate কি করে নাই, করলো না পূর্বানুমান, anticipate the effect of question asking. We enjoy talking about ourselves, but we underestimate the benefits of letting others do the same, to the detriment of our relationship. To the detriment of our relationship. Detriment means খারাপ, এটা কি আমাদের রিলেশনশিপের জন্য খারাপ ছিল, but we underestimate the benefit. Hung findings suggested that most people did not anticipate the effect of question asking. Anticipate তারা কি করলো না, anticipate অনুমান করলো না the effect of question asking, মানে কোশ্চেনটা আস্কিং করা হচ্ছে এর যে ইফেক্ট কি হতে পারে এটার উপরে কি করলো না, অনুমান করলো না। we enjoy talking about ourselves, আমরা আমাদের সম্পর্কে কি করলাম, এনজয় করলাম, আমাদের সম্পর্কে বলতে এটা ভালো লাগা কাজ করলো। বাট কিন্তু we underestimate the benefits of letting others do the same, but we underestimate.
আমরা অন্যদের একই কাজ করতে দেওয়ার সুবিধাগুলিকে অবমূল্যায়ন করি।
ওকে, আমরা আমাদের সম্পর্কে বললাম, কিন্তু সামনে যে রয়েছে underestimate that benefits of letting others do the same, তো আমরা অন্যকে এই সুযোগটা দিই না। to the detriment of our relationship, এই যে সুযোগ দিচ্ছি না, আমরাই বলে যাচ্ছি বা কোশ্চেন করে যাচ্ছি, আরেকজনকে কোশ্চেন করার সুযোগ দিচ্ছি না, এটা আসলেই কতটুকু আমাদের কি করে, ডেট্রিমেন্ট করে। এটা কি ডেট্রিমেন্ট করে রিলেশনশিপে? Okay, but we underestimate the benefit of letting do the same to detriment of our relationship. Okay, the first step, beware empty. What is this? Empathy, সহানুভূতি ও সতর্ক থাকুন।
Beware empathy.
Beware empathy. Beware, W-A-R, beware empathy.
Beware empathy.
Beware empathy মানে সহানুভূতি ও সতর্ক থাকুন। We are often told to place ourselves in other people's shoes. We are we are often told to place ourselves in other people's shoes. We are often told.
আমাদের প্রায়শই বলা হয় নিজেকে অন্য লোকের জুতাতে রাখতে।
Okay, we are often told to place ourselves আমাদের প্লেসে রাখতে হবে in other people's shoes অন্য মানুষের পায়ে, but our empathy is rarely as accurate as we think it is. But our empathy মানে আমাদের সহানুভূতি is rarely as accurate as we think it is.
কিন্তু আমাদের সহানুভূতি খুব কমই সঠিক হয় যতটা আমরা মনে করি।
But our empathy is rarely as accurate, rarely, R-A-R-E-L-Y, rarely, খুবই কম. Rarely as accurate, A-C-C-U-R-A-T, really accurate as we think it is. One reason for this is egocentrism, egocentrism,
Egocentrism.
অহংকেন্দ্রিকতা.
অহংকেন্দ্রিকতা।
Egocentrism. One reason for this is egocentrism. It's when I'm using my own experience, my own mental states as a proxy for yours. My own mental states, my own mental states. আমার নিজের মানসিকতা অবস্থা, my own mental states as a proxy for yours, as a proxy for yours কি আপনার জন্য একটি প্রক্সি হিসেবে, says um, Nicholas Impley, a professor of behavioral science at University of Chicago, and we fail to differentiate sufficiently between the two. And we fail to differentiate D-I-F-F-E-R-E-N-T-I-A-T differentiate sufficiently S-U-F-I-C-I-N-T sufficiently between the two. In its most basic case, GUISC basic case, this ecocentrism can be seen, এটা তখনই দেখা যায় when we point to something in our physical surroundings and fail to recognize that it is out of the other person's. তখনই দেখা যায় it is out of the other person's line of view. When we point to something in our physical surroundings and fail to recognize that is out of the other person's line of view, or when we over আচ্ছা এটার মানে আগে দেখে নিই. This ecocentrism can be seen when we point to something যখন আমরা কোনো কিছু বলি in our physical surroundings আমাদের physical surroundings সম্পর্কে and fail to recognize that এবং সেটা ফেল করি it is out of the other person's line of view. It is out. এটার জন্য ব্যক্তির দৃষ্টিভঙ্গি বাহির,
এটা অন্য ব্যক্তির দৃষ্টিভঙ্গির বাইরে।
তাহলে কি দাঁড়ালো এর মিনিংটা?
এই অহংকেন্দ্রিকতা দেখা যায় যখন আমরা আমাদের শারীরিক পারিপার্শ্বিক কিছুর দিকে ইঙ্গিত করি এবং চিনতে ব্যর্থ হই যে এটি অন্য ব্যক্তির দৃষ্টিভঙ্গির বাইরে।
Or when we overestimate is nice word, overestimate অতিরিক্ত অনুমান করা, overestimate, overestimate, TIMET, overestimate someone's knowledge on a topic that is familiar to us. Or when we overestimate someone's knowledge, যখন আমরা overestimate করি কারোর knowledge-কে on a topic that is familiar to us and fail to explain ourselves properly, এবং সেটা আমরা যথাযথভাবে কি করতে পারি না, যখন এক্সপ্লেন করতে পারি না, এক্সপ্লেন আওয়ারসেলফ প্রপারলি, যখন আমরা পরিপূর্ণভাবে এক্সপ্লেন করতে পারি না সেই টপিকস নিয়ে, ইট মে অলসো লিড আস টু থিঙ্ক দ্যাট সামওয়ান এলস ইজ feeling the same mood as us. It may also lead to us.
এটি আমাদের মনে করতে পারে যে অন্য কেউ আমাদের মতো একই মেজাজ অনুভব করছে।
Or that they hold the same opinions, whether preference for a particular restaurant or their view on controversial topic. We enjoy talking about ourselves, but we underestimate the benefit of letting others do the same, to the detriment of our relationship. ওকে, যে আমরা যে নিজেরাই বলে যাই আরেকজনকে যে অফার বা সুযোগ দিই না, এটা আমাদের রিলেশনে কি ডেট্রিমেন্টাল ইফেক্ট পড়ে কি না এই সম্পর্কে এখানে মেবি বলবে। ইন ইন্টারেস্টিংলি Iple's research has shown that our egocentrism is worse when we are with an acquaintance rather than a stranger. Our egocentrism is worse when we are with an acquaintance. With an acquaintance means পরিচিত, পরিচিত,
acquaintance,
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 acquaintance. Our egocentrism is worse, আমাদের ইগোসেন্ট্রিজমটা কি হয়ে যায়, নষ্ট হয়ে যায় when you are with an acquaintance, যখন আমরা পরিচিত কারোর সাথে কথা বলি, rather than a stranger. A phenomenon called the closeness communication bias. Closeness communication bias. Bias means পক্ষপাত, BIAS, bias. Bias means পক্ষপাত. Okay, communication bias. We often perceive close friend. We often perceive means উপলব্ধি করা, perceive means উপলব্ধি করা. We often perceive
perceive, perceive,
perceive we often perceive close friends and partners to be similar to us, so we assume that they know what we know, they know what we know. So we assume that AWSUME, so we assume that they know what we know. Im, im, Imply explains with strangers, as we may be a bit more cautious about making those assumptions, অনুমান,
assumptions,
assumptions.
assumptions,
Sorry, this pronunciation is assumptions.
assumptions, assumptions,
Assumptions.
assumptions, assumptions.
Well, so what is try to this paragraph that closeness communication bias we often perceive, আমরা অনেক সময় উপলব্ধি করি যে ক্লোজ ফ্রেন্ডস এন্ড পার্টনার্স টু বি সিমিলার টু আস, ক্লোজ ফ্রেন্ডস এবং পার্টনার একই রকম। সো উই অ্যাজিউম দ্যাট, আমরা ভাবি যে, সো উই অ্যাজিউম, এটা বলে সিইউএমই, সো উই অ্যাজিউম দ্যাট, আমরা অনুমান করি যে, দে নো হোয়াট উই নো, তারা জানে যে আমরা কি, আমরা যা জানি। এক্স ইমপ্লাই explains with strangers we may be a bit more cautious about making those assumptions. যখন কোনো স্ট্রেঞ্জারের সাথে, স্ট্রেঞ্জার্স STRANGERS, যখন আমরা স্ট্রেঞ্জারের সাথে কোনো কথাবার্তা বলি বা চিন্তা ভাবনা করি, তখন আমরা a bit more cautious, মানে cautious means careful থাকি about making those assumptions, মানে এই অ্যাসাম্পশন করতে, কি অ্যাসাম্পশন করতে, যে আমরা যা জানি তারা জানে, আমরা খুব ক্লোজ ভাবে নিতে, তখন একটু অনেক রকম ভাবে ভাবি। Okay, we might hope to solve this problem with some conscious perspective talking. You might hope to solve this problem with some conscious, conscious perspective talking, in which you deliberately imagine what the other person is thinking and feeling based on your existing knowledge of them. Yet, employee studies show that in many cases, this practice decreases the accuracy of our social perceptions of our social perceptions উপলব্ধি তার মানে উপলব্ধির কয়টা দেখলাম assume then perceptions perceive perceive means উপলব্ধি করা আবার perceptions উপলব্ধি করা since is still relies on us making assumptions that may not be true. In general, it's far better to ask someone what they actually think and feel, he says, than trying to dive in it. Define, divine, trying to define it. ঐশ্বরিক বিশ্লেষণ করা, trying to define it. Okay, first we should ask him what her feeling, what he actually feel about me or about anything. Then we should define it. Okay, this is the first. Be aware, be aware, empathy, be aware, empathy, be aware, empathy. The main gist here that you should cautious about a stranger person. We should ask him what he like, what it is like, and then it is defined as you like it. Okay, then favor familiarity over originality. মৌলিকত্বের উপরে ফেভার ফ্যামিলিয়ারিটি পরিচিতির পক্ষে ফেভার ফ্যামিলিয়ারিটি
মৌলিকতার চেয়ে পরিচিতির পক্ষে মৌলিকতার চেয়ে পরিচিতির পক্ষে
ওকে ফেভার ফ্যামিলিয়ারিটি ওভার অরিজিনালিটি ফেভার ফ্যামিলিয়ারিটি মানে মৌলিকতার চেয়ে কি করতে পরিচিতের পক্ষে বুঝলাম না ঠিক মতো how about our chooses for the topic of conversation how about our choices for the topic of conversation মানে আমরা কেমন ভাবে কি করতে পারি টপিক চুজ করতে পারি
কথোপকথনের বিষয়ের জন্য আমাদের পছন্দগুলি কেমন
okay how about our choices for the topic of conversation it's natural to assume it's natural to assume that এটা একেবারে প্রাকৃতিক ধারণা করা যায় এটা অনুমান করা স্বাভাবিক যে people favor originality
এটা ধরে নেওয়া স্বাভাবিক যে মানুষ মৌলিকত্বের পক্ষে
okay people favor originality we should always attempt to convey something new and exciting we should always attempt আমাদের সবসময় কি চেষ্টা করা দরকার to convey something convey something কিছু বোঝানো convey something কি করা কিছু বোঝানো convey something new and existing এবং উত্তেজনাপূর্ণ এক্সাইটিং মানে কি উত্তেজনাপূর্ণ এবং এক্সাইটিং convey means বহন করা convey means বহন করা okay we should always attempt to convey something new and existing আমাদের সবসময় বহন করা উচিত কি বহন করা উচিত নিউ অ্যান্ড এক্সিস্টিং যেটা অলরেডি রয়েছে rather than বরং telling someone something they already know rather than আমাদের কি করা উচিত সবসময় নতুন কিছু বলা উচিত বা এক্সিস্টিং যেটা আছে সেটা বলা উচিত বরং telling someone something they already know তারা যা জানে তার থেকে We should always attempt to convey something new and existing rather than telling someone something they already know. But these intuitions are of creator. Intuitions আবার কি অন্তর্দৃষ্টি
Intuitions.
intuitions
Intuition. Intuitions.
intu
Intuitions.
intuitions
Intuitions.
intuitions
Intuitions.
intuitions of are all kilter.
কিন্তু এই ইনটুইশনস বন্ধ কিল্টার।
According to research by Gauss Clooney of social physiologist at University of US, as suffer a novelty penalty when you discuss something new compared to a subject that is already familiar to the listener. When we discuss something new compared to a subject um, is already familiar to listener. মানে when we discuss something new, যখন আমরা নতুন when we are talking about new anything, new subject, new culture, compare to a subject, এটাকে কি করতে হবে? Compare করতে হবে. We should compare it about something those are existing already here and we are familiar with that. During one experiment, participants were placed into a group of three, placed PLSCED into group of three while alone. Each member watched one of two short videos which either described the intelligence of crows of the creation of specialist soda pops. The trio then meet in their groups and one member was asked to describe the video he or she had seen while the others listened for 2 minutes. ওকে একটা ভিডিও দেখবে, সেই ভিডিওতে কি আছে তারা এক একজন করে দেখবে এবং বলবে, আর এটি শুনতে হবে 2 মিনিট করে। লিসেন, আর আরেকজন 2 মিনিট করে শুনবে। Surprising, the listener preferred to hear the speaker describing the video they had already seen. Surprisingly, আশ্চর্যজনকভাবে, the listener preferred to hear the speaker. The listenerটি preferred to hear the speaker describing the video. Okay.
শ্রোতারা ভিডিওটির বর্ণনাকারী বক্তা শুনতে পছন্দ করেন।
They had already seen while they distinctly while যখন they remind distinctly স্পষ্ট হবে distinctly the important word. I should write down this word, this dinctly, distinctly.
Distinctly. Distinctly. Distinctly. Distinctly.
Distinctly. Paper to hear the speaker describing the video they had already seen while they remained distinctly স্পষ্ট হবে while they remained distinctly underwhelmed মানে কি?
যখন তারা স্বতন্ত্রভাবে অভিভূত ছিল।
Distinctly underwhelmed. If he spoke about the unfamiliar clip, despite the fact it was providing fresh information that they had not heard before. Connie argues that the novelty penalty arises from the informational gaps in our conversation. If we are talking about something completely new, our audience may not have enough knowledge to understand everything that we are saying. if we are talking about something already familiar to our audience, however, the listeners can fill in those gaps themselves. However, I hope the listeners can fill in those gaps themselves. Okay, here the main gist is if we are talking about something completely new, if we are talking about new something, our audience they may have enough knowledge to understand everything. They haven't Our audience haven't understand everything because they haven't know about or know anything knowledge about that. Or besides that, if we are talking about something already familiar to our audience already know about something. If we say about that, the listeners can fill in those gap themselves. যদি আমরা আমাদের অডিয়েন্সের সাথে নিউ কোনো কিছু নিয়ে কথাবার্তা বলি, তারা অনেকটা গ্যাপ তারা বুঝতে পারে না অনেক কিছু, এটা স্বাভাবিক। এবং যদি আমরা আমাদের ফ্যামিলিয়ার কোনো কিছু তাদের সাথে আলোচনা করি, তারপরেও তারা নিজেরাই একটা কি করে ফেলে, একটা গ্যাপ তৈরি করে ফেলে। দ্য লিসেনার্স ক্যান ফিল ইন দোজ গ্যাপস দেমসেলভস। দ্য লিসেনার ক্যান ফিল ইন দোজ গ্যাপ দেমসেলভস।
শ্রোতারা নিজেরাই সেই শূন্যস্থান পূরণ করতে পারে।
If you are talking about something already familiar to our audience, however, the listener can fill in those gaps themselves. Fill in those gaps themselves. গ্যাপটা পূরণ করতে পারে। If you are importing new information, figure out খুঁজে বের করা। Figure out a way to make it relatable. If you are importing new information, যদি নিউ ইনফরমেশনটি দিতে চাও, then কি করতে হবে, figure out a way to make it relatable, or you tell might fall flat পড়ে যেতে পারে। The novelty penalty might explain why a description of an exotic holiday means বহিরাগত ছুটির দিন।
Exotic holiday.
The novelty penalty might explain why a description of an exotic holiday can often fall flat with your colleagues unless they have been to that location themselves. When the experience is so vibrant in your head, and you can vibrant in your head when the experience is so vibrant in your head.
Vibrant.
Vibrant, sorry.
Vibrant. Vibrant.
Vibrant in your head, and you can smell it and taste it and see all the colors. You just assume the other people can do it too, says Connie. The novelty penalty might explain why a description of an exotic holiday can often fall flat with your colleagues unless they have been to that location themselves. When the experience is so vibrant in your head,
অভিজ্ঞতা আপনার মাথায় তাই প্রাণবন্ত।
experience is so vibrant in your head, and you can smell it and taste it and see all the colors. You just assume other people can do it too. Connie suggests you might be able to overcome the novelty penalty with finally turned storytelling that helps to create a vivid impression. A vivid impression. A vivid impression.
A vivid impression. A vivid impression.
I write down this collocation. Vivid impression, vivid impression of the event you were describing. When you are aware of this, you might try a little harder to bring that experience alive. He says, until you have perfect your better, however, it may be safer to pick topics of conversation that learn on shared experience. মানে you might try a little harder to bring that experience alive. When you are aware of this, you might try a little harder to bring the experience alive. He says, until you have perfect your better, um, however, it may be safer to pick topics for of conversation that lean on standard experience, shared experience. That lean on means okay. Then third number is don't be afraid to go deep. Don't be afraid to go deep. Don't be afraid. গভীর যেতে ভয় পাবেন না. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to go deep. This need for common ground should not limit our conversation to mountain small talk. This need for common ground should not limit our conversation to mundane,
mundane,
mundane small talk. This need for common ground should not limit our conversation to mundane small talk.
কমন গ্রাউন্ডের এই প্রয়োজনীয়তা আমাদের কথোপকথনকে জাগতিক ছোট আলোচনার মধ্যে সীমাবদ্ধ করা উচিত নয়।
This need for common ground should not limit our conversation to mundane small talk. লিমিট করা উচিত না। On the contrary, এর বিপরীত দেখে many shared human experience can be incredibly profound. Can be incredibly profound. Incredibly profound. Incredibly, DIB. Incredibly profound, okay? Many share human experience. অনেকজন human experience share করেছে. It can be incredibly profound. And Eppley's recent research showed that people appreciate the chance to explore their enormous thought and feeling. Enormous. People appreciate পছন্দ করে the chance to explore their innermost thought and feeling, even if they are talking to perfect strangers. Even if they are talking to perfect strangers. Ipley's team asked pair of participants who had not met previously, যারা কখনো দেখা করে নাই, previously. It discussed questions such as if a crystal ball could tell you the truth about yourself, your life, and your future, or anything else, what would you want to know? What you want to know? If a crystal ball could tell you the truth about yourself, your life, your future, or anything else, what would you like to do? What would you like to? What would you like to know? Beforehand,
beforehand, beforehand, beforehand,
beforehand, most participants fear the exchanges would be painfully awkward. Yet the conversation flowed far more smoothly than they had predicted periodicity. They also felt a greater sense of connection with their conversation partner than they had thought possible, and this was also accompanied by a happier mood following the exchange. In general, the participants were much more interested in their conversation partner um, innermost through the feelings than each had initially imagined. The novel penalty might explain why a description of an exotic holiday and often fall flat with your colleague unless they have been talked. In this deep conversation, you get access to mind of another person, and you get to recognize that the other person actually care about you. Okay, says Ipley, and that can make for a touching exchange of words, even if we will never encounter that person again. Okay, আমাদের যদি খুবই ডিপ কনভারসেশন হয় তাহলে আদার্স পিপলের মাইন্ডে কি চলছে এটা আমাদের বুঝতে হবে, এটা আমাদের রিকগনাইজ করতে হবে। পারসন অ্যাকচুয়ালি কেয়ার অ্যাবাউট ইউ অ্যান্ড ভাবতে হবে যে সেই পারসনটা কিভাবে রেসপন্স দিচ্ছে। ক্যান মেক ফর টাচিং এক্সচেঞ্জ অফ ওয়ার্ড, এটাকেই বলা হচ্ছে কি এক্সচেঞ্জ অফ টাচ, ইভেন ইফ উইল নেভার এনকাউন্টার দ্য পারসন এগেন। নেভার এনকাউন্টার, নেভার এনকাউন্টার, নেভার এনকাউন্টার সম্মুখীন। দেন value tactful honesty over mindless kindness. Over mindless kindness. অবুঝ দয়া, mindless kindness. Value tactful honesty. Tactful honesty means কৌশলী সততা।
Tactful honesty.
Okay, কৌশলী সততা. Tactful honesty over mindless kindness.
বুদ্ধিহীন দয়ার চেয়ে কৌশলী সততাকে মূল্য দিন।
বুদ্ধিহীন দয়ার চেয়ে
বুদ্ধিহীন দয়ার চেয়ে কৌশলী সততাকে মূল্য দিন।
ওকে, ভ্যালু tactful honesty বুদ্ধিহীন দয়ার থেকে কৌশলী সততা। tactful honesty, okay. TACTFUL, tactful honesty আর বুদ্ধিহীন দয়া mindless kindness, বুদ্ধিহীন দয়া, চাইলে লিখে নিতে পারেন। আর tactful honesty mean কৌশলী সততা। সেটা কি? কৌশলী সততা। Imagine for a moment you were compelled to talk with complete honesty during every social interaction. How would your relationship fare? কিভাবে আপনার সম্পর্ক ভালো হবে? Okay, imagine for a moment you were compelled to talk, compelled to talk, কথা বলতে বাধ্য with complete honesty. You were compelled to talk, কথা বলতে বাধ্য, compelled to talk, কথা বলতে বাধ্য with complete honesty during every social interaction. How would your relationship fare? A few years ago, Emma Levin, an associate professor of behavioral science at the University of Chicago, and Toya Johan, an associate professor of organizational behavior of Carnegie Mellon University, decided to turn this thought experiment into reality. decided to turn this thought experiment into reality. The recruited 150 participants who were divided into three groups. তাদেরকে তিন গ্রুপে ডিভাইড করা হলো. The first set were asked to be absolutely honest in every conversation, at home and at work. For the next 3 days, the second set were told to be kind, caring, and considerate for the same period, while the final third were encouraged to behave normally. এক গ্রুপকে বলা হলো একদম সততাভাবে বলবো, আরেক গ্রুপকে বলা হলো যে টাইম ওয়ার্ক এন্ড নেক্সট 3 days বি কাইন্ড হতে হবে, কেয়ারিং হতে হবে, অ্যান্ড কনসিডারেট ফর দ্য সেম পিরিয়ড ওয়াইল দ্য ফাইনাল থার্ড ওয়ার এনকারেজ টু বিহেভ নর্মালি, এবং থার্ড যেটা সেটাকে বলা হলো নর্মাল বিহেভ করো. মোস্ট পিপল প্রেডিক্ট দ্য কাইন্ড গ্রুপ উড হ্যাভ দ্য বেস্ট এক্সপিরিয়েন্স.
বেশিরভাগ লোক ভবিষ্যৎবাণী করে যে দয়ালু গ্রুপের সেরা অভিজ্ঞতা হবে।
Most people, most people, most people, most people, most people predict the kind group would have the best experience. Most people predict the kind group would have the best experience, while the honest group would struggle to keep their friendship. While the honest group would struggle to keep their friendship. Struggle to keep their friendship. Most people predict the kind group would have the best experience, while the honest group would struggle to keep their friendships. Most people predict the kind group would have the best experience. Okay, kind group would have হতে পারে, would have হতে পারে যদি থাকতো. Most people কি বলছে এটা রে?
বেশিরভাগ লোক ভবিষ্যৎবাণী করে যে ধরনের গ্রুপের সেরা অভিজ্ঞতা হবে।
While the honest group would struggle to keep their friendship, yet the honest participants score just as highly on measures of pleasure and social connection throughout the 3 day as those who were told be kind and often found a lot of meaning in the exchanges. Yet, এখন পর্যন্ত the honest participant scored, honest যার গ্রুপটা ছিল সবসময় honest বলবে, scored just as highly on measures of pleasure and social connection throughout the 3 days as those who were told to be kind. এত কঠিন কেন সেন্টেন্সগুলো?
তবুও সৎ অংশগ্রহণকারীরা 3 দিন জুড়ে আনন্দ এবং সামাজিক সংযোগের পরিমাপের উপর ঠিক ততটাই উচ্চ স্কোর করেছে যাদেরকে সদয় হতে বলা হয়েছিল, এবং প্রায়শই বিনিময়ে অনেক অর্থ পাওয়া যায়।
It seems like it would be awful. মনে হচ্ছে এটা ভয়ানক হবে. It seems like it would be awful, says Cohen, but the participant reported being happy to have had the honest conversation, even if they were hurt. Even if they were hurt.
এমনকি যদি তারা কঠিন।
Okay, in flow-up experiment, asked peers of friend, colleagues or spouse to open up about personal issues, such as the last time they cried or the issues with their current relationship. In each case, the honest communication proved to be far more constructive than people predicted. Constructive, গঠনমূলক, okay? Proved to be far more, অনেক বেশি, far more, অনেক বেশি, okay? Far more, nice, far more, M-O-R-E, far more, proved to be far more constructive than people predicted, মানুষ ভবিষ্যৎবাণী করেছে than people predicted, okay? And the benefit of the candid disclosure, disclosure মানে প্রকাশ,
disclosure,
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 disclosure. I write down this word, disclosure, CLOSURE, disclosure মানে প্রকাশ, disclosure মানে হচ্ছে প্রকাশ, disclosure মানে প্রকাশ। In follow-up experiments, Cohen asked pairs of friends, colleagues, or spouses, spouses, spouses to open up about personal issues such as the last time they cried of the issues with their current relationship. In each case, the honest communication proved to be far more constructive than people predicted, and the benefits of candidate disclosure on their overall well-being continued for at least a week afterwards. These conversations were having downstream positive effect on relationships. Downstream means নিম্নধারা
downstream,
নিম্নধারা downstream positive effect, downstream positive effect.
নিম্নধারার ইতিবাচক প্রভাব।
Okay, downstream positive effect on the relationship. Downstream positive effect on the relationship. Downstream positive আজান পড়ছে, একটু অফ করে রাখি। It seems like awful, says Cohen, but the participation reporting being happy to have had the honest conversation, even if they were hurt. In flow experiments, Cohen asked peers of friends, colleagues, or pals to open up about personal issues such as the last time they cried or the issues or the issues with their current relationship. In each case, the honest communication proved to be far more constructive than people predicted. Far more constructive than people predicted. It means,
মানুষের পূর্বাভাসের চেয়ে অনেক বেশি গঠনমূলক।
okay, constructive means গঠনমূলক than people predicted. And the benefits of candid disclosure on their having demonstrate positive effect on the relationship. Joan says it was a valuable experience. It should go without saying that honesty is best served with a dose of diplomacy heavily dose of diplomacy. Cohen says that you should think carefully about the timing of your comments, the way they are phrased, and whether the person will have the opportunity to make use of information. 5 minutes before the wedding, you don't need to tell the bride that she looks terrible. Terrible, right? ভয়ানক 5 minutes before the wedding, you don't need to tell the bride that she looks terrible, right? There's no excuse for being a bully, for being a bully মানে ধমক।
bully,
Okay, for being a bully, even if you think your insults convey the truth. If even if you এমনকি যদি আপনার মনে করেন আপনার অপমান সত্য প্রকাশ করে। You think you insult convey the truth. When predicting each of these 5 steps, you should always remain conscious of other person mood and comfort, and be prepared to step away when your conversational gambits are not welcome. But with a little tact, sensitivity, and genuine interest in the people around you, you may often find that greater social connection is easily within your reach. Within your reach. Okay? Hmm. That's the article of today's, we know. And after reading this article, I definitely say that I want to say that honesty is best policy. It's not a certain situation. The all situation we should maintain. We should follow up this statement that honesty is a best policy. Okay. So how much time I need? 1 hour 25 minutes. 1 hour 25 minutes. 5 minutes read the whole article. Wow, it's long time. Okay, if anyone have with me, please make yourself you read this article and make comment in your comment box how much time you need so that I can understand your reading skill and compare with me. Okay, so please write down in the box below. Now I am resetting the stopwatch and try to reading just fast reading again without understanding, without any just skimming or skimming. Try to read out the whole passage. Okay, let's start now. The conversational habits that build better connections. Can you chat your way to greater social connections? 5 useful steps can help us strengthen ties and avoid mistakes. There is no such thing as conversation. The novelist and literary critic Rebecca West famously wrote in her collection of stories, The Harsh Voice, it is an illusion. They are interesting, they are intersecting monologues that is all, in her opinion, our own words simply pass over the words of others without any profound communication taking place. Profound communication means খুবই ভালো communication খুব গভীর communication. Profound communication, okay? Profound communication means গভীর communication. লিখে রাখি profound communication, গভীর কথোপকথন. Who has not been able to empathize with this sentiment at some point in their life, whether we are making small talk with a barista or meeting up with close friends? We may hope to make a connection only to leave the conversation feeling that our minds have failed to meet. The pandemic has really heightened our awareness of these sensations. After a long period of isolation, 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 isolation. Our higher for social contact is greater than ever, and it is even more disappointing to feel that a void remains between us and others, even when rules of physical distancing have been lifted. If this rings true for you, help may be at hand. During the past few years, psychologists studying the art of conversation have identified many of the barriers that stand in the way of deeper connection and the way to remove them. Read on for the top 5 steps to better conversation. Asked question. First is asked question. The first step might seem obvious, yet it is often forgotten. If you want to have a meaningful dialogue with someone, rather than to in intersecting monologues, then you should make the effort to ask some question. Consider the research of Korean Hang, the assistant professor at Georgetown University, US, while studying for PhD organization behavior at Harvard University. Hung invited more than 130 participants to her laboratory and asked them to conserve and peers for 15 minutes through an online instant messenger. She found that even in this short period of time, people's rates of question asking very widely from around 4 four or fewer at the low in into nine or more the high end. Throughout a series of follow-up studies, Hang found question asking made a significant differences to people's likability. Analyzing the conversation at its speed during events, for example, she found that the number of questions asked by the participant could vary their chance of scoring another meeting. Not at all, not all questions are equally charming. A follow-up that requires more information about the previous point is more appealing than a switch that changes topic, or a mirror that simply copies what someone has already asked you. Importantly, Hang's findings suggested that most people did not anticipate the effect of question asking. We enjoyed talking about ourselves, but we underestimate the benefits of letting others do the same to the detrimental of our relationship. To the detrimental of our relationship. Okay, the next step is BRMT. We are often told places ourselves in our people shoes, but our empathy is really as accurate as we think it is. One reason for this is ecocentrism. It's when I'm using my own experience, my own mental stakes as a proxy of yours, says Nicholas Impley, a professor of behaviorism science at the University of Chicago, and we fail to differentiate sufficiently between two. It is most basic case. This ecocentrism can be seen when we point to something in our physical surrounding and fail to recognize that it is out of other person's line on view, or when we overestimated someone's knowledge on topic that familiar to us and fail to explain ourselves properly. It may also lead us to think that someone else is feeling the same mood as us, or that they hold the same opinions, whether the preferences of particular restaurant or their views on a controversial topics. We enjoy talking about ourselves, but we underestimate the benefits of letting others do the same to the detriment of our relationship. Interestingly, police research has shown that our ecocentrism is worse when you are with an acquaintance rather than a stranger. A phenomenon called closeness communication bias. We often perceive close friends and partner to be similar to us, as you as you assume that they know what they know. Equally explained with strangers, we may be a bit more cautious about making lost assumptions. You might hope to solve this problem with some conscious perspective talking, in which you deliberately imagine what the other person is talking, is thinking and feelings based on your existing knowledge of them. Yet, embodied studies shows that in many cases, this practice decreases the accuracy of our social perceptions, since it still relies on us making assumptions that may not be true. In general, it's far better to ask someone what they actually think and feel, he says, than trying to define it. And the next one, the next word is favor familiarity over originality. How about your choices for the topic of conversation? It's natural to assume that people favor originality, which will always attempt to confess something new and existing, rather than telling someone something they already know. But this institutions are of culture. According to research by Josh Coney, a social psychologist at the University of US, we suffer a novelty penalty when we discuss something new compared to the subject that is already familiar to the listener. During one experience, participants were placed into a group of the three. while Eloni's number was on the two short videos, which either describe the intelligence of crowds and creation of specialist soda pops. The trio then meet in their groups, and one member, the speaker, was asked to describe the video or he had seen, while the others listen for 2 minutes. Surprisingly, the listeners prefer to hear the speaker describing the video they had already seen, while they remain distractedly underwhelmed if he spoke about the unfamiliar clip, despite the fact it was proving the fresh information that they had not heard before. Connie argues that the novelty penalty arises from the informational gaps in our conversation. If we are talking about something completely new, our audience may not have enough knowledge to understand everything that we are saying. If we are talking about something already familiar to our audience, however, the listeners can fill in those gaps themselves. The novelty penalty might explain why a description of an exotic holiday can often fall flat with your colleagues unless they have been to that location themselves. When the experience is so vibrant in your head and you can smell it and taste it and see all colors, you just assume other people can do it too, says Connie. Connie suggests you might to be able to overcome the novelty penalty with finely turned storytelling that help to create a vivid impression of the events you are describing. When you are aware of this, you might try a little harder to bring that experience alive, he says. Until you have perfected your pager, however, it may be safer pick topics of conversation that lean on your experience. Don't be afraid to go deep. This need for common ground should not limit our conversation to minor small talk. On the contrary, many shared human experience can be incredibly profound. Incredibly profound. Incredibly profound means অবিশ্বাস্যভাবে গভীর, incredibly profound, incredibly profound, in CREATABLY, sorry, CREDIB, profound, FOUND, incredibly profound. And imply recent research shows that most people appreciate the chance to explore their innermost throughout the feelings, even if they are talking to perfect strangers. Innermost means enormous. Employee team asked peers of participants who had not met previously to discuss questions such as if a crystal ball could tell you the truth about yourself, your life, your future, or anything else. What would you want to know? Beforehand, most participants feared the exchanges would be painfully awkward, yet the conversation flowed for many smoothly than they had predicted. They also felt a greater sense of connection with their conversation partners than they had throughout possible, and this was also accompanied by a happier mood following the exchange. In general, the participants were much more interested in their conversation partners, enormous throughout, and feeling that each had initially imagined. Enormous, thoughtful. Enormous means antarama. Okay, in these deep conversations you get access to the mind of another person and you get recognize the other person actually cares about you, says empathy, and that can make for a touching exchange of words even if we'll never encounter the person again. Value tactful honesty or mindless kindness. Okay, imagine for a moment you were compelled to talk with completely honesty during every social interactions in interaction. How would your relationship fare? a few years ago, Emma Levin, an associate professor of behavioral science at the University of Chicago, and Toya Cohen as associate professor of organizational behavior of Chicago Mellon University, decided to turn this throughout experience into reality. They recruited 150 participants who were divided into three groups. The first set were asked to be absolutely honest in every conversation at home and at work for the next 3 days. The second set were told to be a kind, caring, and considering for the same period, while the final third were encouraged to behave normally. Most people predict the kind group would have the best experience, while the honest group would strive to keep their friendship. Yet the honest participants scored just as highly as measure of pressure and social connection throughout the 3 days as those who were told to be kind, and often found a lot of meaning the exchanges. It seems make like it would be awful, says Cohen, but the participants report being happy to have had the honest conversation, even if they were hard. In follow-up experiment, Cohen asked pairs of friends, colleagues, or spouse to open up personal issues, such as the last time they cried, or issues with their current relationship. In each case, the honest communication proved to be far more constructive than people predicted, and the benefit of the candidate scholars on their overall well-being continued for the last week afterwards. These conversations were having downstream positive effect on the relationship. Cohen says it was a valuable experience, really. It should go without saying the honesty is best served with a healthy dose of diplomacy. Quinn says that you should think carefully about the timing on your comments, the way they are praised, and whether the person will have the opportunity to make use of the information. 5 minutes before the wedding, you didn't need to tell the bride that she looks terrible, right? There's no excuse for being a bully, even if you think your insults convey the truth. The one practices of the five steps, you should always remain conscious of the other person's mood and comfort, and to be prepared to step away when your conversational gambirs are not welcome. But with a little tact, sensitivity, and a genuine interest in the people around you, you may often find that greater social connection is easier without your rights. So there's the whole article I read. Wow, Alhamdulillah, thankful to God to giving me the chance to read this article again. Okay, I forget how much time I need. I forget to start the stopwatch, so please forgive me. Even I think I reckon that I need just 15 minutes, 50 to 20 minutes, okay, to read this whole article. Okay, if anyone have with me till now, please read out this whole article and comment me in my comment box how much time you need to read those article overall time. Okay, so let's finish it. Today's reading challenges. um, okay, next time I will meet you tomorrow again with another article, another our 17 reading challenge to hit our desired goal to get high marks, get a good marks, get a good band in your IELTS exam, and according to speaking, according the reading capability, fast reading capability with scanning and skimming power. Okay, so my guys, goodbye for today, and we'll meet you again in inshallah. Goodbye. Ta-da.